Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're joining us from. We've got a fantastic session lined up for you today. We're going to be diving into the success story of Videcon. Videcon are one of the UK's most established leading distributors in the security space. They are a leader in the security industry, but their e-commerce was not keeping pace with what their customers wanted. And so we're going to dive into their success story and how they transformed the digital side of their business. I've got three fantastic guests with me today, and I'm going to hand off to them to introduce themselves. John Brown for Videcon, will you go first, please?
Absolutely, thanks. So I've been in charge of the marketing department here at Videcon for 2 years. I've been in the business for 5 years, and I'm really excited to introduce this webinar today with you all, how we developed the e-commerce system here at Videcon.
And of course, when you're embarking on a digital transformation, you often need fantastic partners to help you along that journey. And Videcon worked with Agency 51, who are an incredible leading partner here with BigCommerce. I'll hand off to Ian to introduce himself from Agency 51.
Hi, I'm Ian Lawton. I'm the CTO at Agency 51. I lead our technical strategy and solutions architecture, and I spend most of my time in the trenches of enterprise e-commerce, particularly the B2B space, and very excited to be here today to talk about the success of Videcon.
Awesome. And John Barton, over to you. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, so I work with Ian at Agency 51, so I'm the development director, so I lead the technical team here, right through from when we embark on discovery, right through implementation, through to kind of the ongoing success for the clients through the lifetime of our journey with us. So yes, I'm really pleased to be here and talk about how we help Videcon.
Thank you. This is great. We've got two Johns on a webinar, which is fantastic. John Brown, let's start with you. Could you tell us a little bit about Videcon? Who are you? What do you sell, and who do you sell to?
Absolutely. So Videcon is a leading UK distributor of CCTV, fire intruder, door entry, and access control systems. We sell directly to the UK trade security market, and we've been established since about 1995. Our aim really is to be an all-encompassing business, from distribution to support to design systems, and we work with some of the biggest integrators in the UK security market.
That's fantastic. A real leader in the space. But of course, we're here to talk about technology and how technology can drive business. But we can't really do that without setting the scene first. So if you wouldn't mind, can you set the scene of before you embarked on this digital transformation, what did your technology solution stack look like? And what were some of the pain points that really drove behind the scenes for the business?
Absolutely. So when I took the reins of the marketing department, we actually didn't have an e-commerce capability. The old system that we used had become redundant and hadn't been updated, and we had to switch off the facility. So essentially our customers had no access to e-commerce, which is a big issue given, the growing digital space across every industry, not just our own. We launched a new CRM/ERP system in the form of Oracle NetSuite, and we got that working across the business. So our aim really was to develop e-commerce that linked into that, integrated into that. The problem was that really our customers, being a very manual industry, needed access to the website and purchasing capabilities on a 24/7 scale. So an e-commerce website provides that. They can order at all hours of the day. And from a product management side, it all needed to be managed from one central point. We sell about 40,000 products from about 300 brands here at Videcon. So keeping all the information in one space is really important to us.
That's great, right? That's a big catalog. You have 40,000 products that you're selling, lots of information. Your customers want access to that information. Of course, you want to give them access to that information. But I don't think what you're describing there is that unique in this industry. So if for those who are listening in, don't get all scared. Oh no, does everyone else feel like this as well? Ian, how frequently is that you see, very similar situations with product data and with e-commerce that isn't functioning the way that it should?
Yeah, I mean it's very typical, that we see this. We see this pattern all the time with B2B businesses. You've got a company there, hugely successful, fantastic, loyal customers, a great reputation in the market, but unfortunately the e-commerce side hadn't really kept up with the rest of the business. As John said, what was interesting about the timing of the project is that they rolled out a NetSuite as the new ERP platform. So they'd already made that commitment to invest in modernizing the back office. So the next logical step was investing in the e-commerce platform. And the old site was, it was disconnected. It was slow. I think some customers would probably say it was painful to use. Product data wasn't sometimes, synced correctly. Prices weren't synced all the time. So yeah, it didn't really reflect the quality of service that Videcon are really known for. And as a business, they had all the classical, the classic B2B complexities on top of that: customer-specific pricing, account-based purchasing, credit limits, and the gap between, what customers expect these days from, what you often see with legacy systems. Well, that's the situation we walk into almost on every project. And it's where BigCommerce B2B edition really comes into its own, that, there's often a lot of low-hanging fruit that we can go at, and a lot of improvements we can make straight away.
And I think that's actually a fantastic segue. You talked there about customer expectation and customer experience. John Brown, I'm curious what that meant for Videcon. You have fantastic, loyal customers that clearly love the experience that your sales reps are giving them. How for you did that kind of translate into online, what you wanted to get, what you wanted to deliver with that online experience?
Absolutely. And, people who shop online need ease, need it to be navigational, and really with technology, the information and specification of these cameras, these recorders, this fire equipment is at the forefront of people's purchasing decisions. We don't want to faff around. They need to be able to make an order easily at any point of the day and have access to the right information so they can actually spec these installations. And I think really what we did here is make sure the information was displayed in a really clean, precise way. And we spent a lot of time making sure that the navigation of the website through the different categories was an essential part of how we built it.
So it's got to be easy. It's got to be quick. Customers need to be able to find exactly what they're looking for. You make it sound so easy. But John Barton, I'm sure it wasn't that easy. I'm sure if it was that easy, it would have been, everyone would have already been doing it. You'd already have been online. So can you walk us through some of the complexities of a business of this scale, a B2B business, that look large catalog, complex products, lots of information? Walk us through what made this more difficult. Why is it more difficult to get a business like this online? And as others that are listening or approaching this, what should they be thinking about?
That's a really great question, Lance. I think the biggest challenge is, what we call the Amazon effect. B2B buyers aren't just buyers. They're people who shop on Amazon and ASOS in the evening. They're conditioned to expect instant load times, clean interfaces, zero friction when they shop. So if the site's clunky, they'll simply go elsewhere where the experience is going to be better for them. The difficulty for us as developers is that B2C is actually relatively simple logic. One price for the entire site for everybody, pay now, ship tomorrow. B2B, of course, is the exact opposite, as we all know. It's built some layers of heavy logic, negotiate contract rates, tiered quantity breaks, credit limits, account restrictions, etc. So the design challenge really is, how do we hide that complexity? Because, of course, when user logs in, the site effectively transforms. It must instantly reconfigure to show their specific pricing, their catalog, what is their stock levels. If we expose that complexity, if the user's got to wait 5 seconds for a live price lookup every time they visit a product page, we failed. The experience feels broken compared to their personal shopping experiences. So making a B2B site function is one thing. Making it feel as fast and simple as a B2C retail site, or handling that heavy data load in the background is the genuinely difficult part.
Yeah, I really like that, right? There are so many things between B2B and B2C experiences that are similar, but there are fundamentals that are so different. And actually, one of the things that annoys me the most is when people say, oh, we want a B2C-like experience. Sure, but there is so much complexity there. And you listed off some fantastic examples there, right? You're purchasing on behalf of an account, you're purchasing on terms, there's different pricing, potentially discounted pricing. Very little of that exists when I go on Amazon today, right? And we need all of that to exist on the Videcon site, which of course it now does. But John Brown, you kind of spoke there about, I think, diving into that experience. I'm curious, or John Barton, you spoke about that. I'm curious, John Brown, from your perspective, when we think about technology, it's often difficult. We might be on old, antiquated systems. They might be out of date. How did you approach the technology aspect of this, right? We mentioned ERP and NetSuite. What other technologies were you using? How did you make sure that they would then be integrated? Did you have to change any other technologies, or were you looking to keep them in place?
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, we'd just established obviously the relationship with NetSuite, and it had a few years in the mix of being built. And that is a piece of software that covers every aspect of Videcon, from finance to product management to invoicing, customer management, is all based within that software. And we put a lot of time, effort, and also money behind that. So it was really important that we kept everything there in place and made that work for the website. So we were lucky that that already existed. I think the guys from Ages 51 will say that also probably brought its challenges with the integration side of things. But, we made it work, and it all now is a seamless experience at either end for the customer and from a management perspective as well.
I love that. And I know people listening when we said, oh, NetSuite ERP integration, well, there'll be people shuddering listening and oof, ERP integration. That's a big old task. And especially obviously you're just implementing an entire new ERP. That's a really, really big task. But obviously, Ian, from your perspective, as the technologists and the partners in the room, how do you go about and approach this from an architectural perspective? How do you make sure that the data is flowing where it needs to flow, that it's accurate, that it's up to date?
Well, I mean, the main principle right from the beginning was that, the new NetSuite ERP system would, be a single source of truth. So, you've got products, pricing, stock levels, customer information, credit limits, all that master data would be in NetSuite. So, I mean, we built a dedicated integration layer, a middleware application hosted on Google Cloud Platform that orchestrated all the various data flows between the two systems that, kept things clean and meant the two platforms were tightly coupled together. And when it comes to integration, performance, it's always at the forefront of our mind. It's always something that I worry about. Videcon, as noted, have a large catalog with complex multi-layered pricing, customer-specific pricing. So we're talking literally millions and millions of price records that are in the ERP system that need, pushing to BigCommerce, as well as real-time stock inventory. And, so waiting hours for that data to sync just isn't acceptable. Customers need to see accurate prices and stock levels and not things that are out of date. So the integration, we built smart caching and delta detection into the middleware, so that every sync cycle we'd identify what had actually changed and only push the differences across, which hugely optimize things. But a big advantage, and is always an advantage, is BigCommerce API first architecture. Unlike some other platforms, we're not rate limited, whereby we can only send so many calls per second. So having that power in BigCommerce gives us a lot of creativity and freedom in a way that we can better architect the solutions. And many of the features that are already in B2B edition mean that a lot of the heavy lifting in e-commerce is already handled for us. So it just means that we can focus our efforts on the integration and things that are truly unique to Videcon, rather than building common B2B features from scratch.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's a complex business. Why is being so tightly integrated to that ERP? Why is it so important for a B2B business like Videcon, Ian?
Well, a lot of the vision for the new website was that buying online should feel the same as calling a sales rep. Given that they just invested in a lot of money in NetSuite and the ERP system, it made complete sense that the website needed to be an extension of that and not something completely separate. So when a customer logged in, they saw their prices, and their credit limits and their account statuses, and a great example of how the integration drove real efficiency was a new customer onboarding process. So the trade application form. So on the old site, prospects would come to the site, they'd fill out a trade application form, and that would just be fired off into somebody's inbox. And quite often that would kind of be sort of missed, forgotten about, you know what I mean? So it was just, the dependency was on somebody checking that inbox and processing that prospect. So what we did is we enhanced the B2B edition trade application form functionality by taking a new prospect information out of BigCommerce, pushing it directly into NetSuite, and then it would appear on a sales rep's dashboard, based on geography. Sales rep would contact that prospect, qualify them, and hopefully the prospect becomes a customer. We then pull that signal back out of NetSuite, back into BigCommerce. Customer gets an email saying your account's now set up. You can log in. They log in, and they can start to place orders. And that's just a perfect example of what that tight integration actually looks in practice.
Yeah, I love that, right? There'd be nothing worse than a new customer coming to your site, applying to be a trade customer, and a salesperson missing that new customer coming in, right? You need that approved as quickly as possible, and then they can place the order, right? And with that tight integration, that can happen really quickly. What I want to do here is open the box a little bit, right? Let's not pretend everything is always super simple and easy, because we know it's not. Complex businesses require complex processes. So maybe, John Barton, for us, you can pull back the curtains a little bit and walk through some of the hardest things to get right when you were thinking about kind of this integration, and maybe a little bit about why was BigCommerce the right platform for those decisions.
Certainly has. Yeah, so Ian's touched on this, and for us, it's definitely the pricing, specifically regarding site performance. As Ian's mentioned, when the volume of data Videcom's got, you've got thousands of products multiplied by thousands of customers. You quickly end up with millions of specific price points. So we essentially faced a fork in the road. How we're going to handle this? Option one: we don't store these prices in BigCommerce. Instead, every time a customer loads a product page, it's like pauses, makes a real-time call to NetSuite. How much is this? And then displays the page. The problem is, it's incredibly slow. It creates a lagging, clunky experience. It feels like an old school portal, not the modern e-commerce experience that Videcon wanted. It's got knock-on effects in all aspects of the site, such as filtering on prices, which of course isn't really feasible if you have to load all the prices up when the customer views a particular category. Option two, and the one, of course, that we wanted, was to store all those millions of price records directly inside of BigCommerce. That way, when the customer logs in, the price is already there. It's instant. And the challenge of option two is usually updates. How do you keep millions of these stored records in sync without it taking all day? And to be honest, that's why we chose BigCommerce. Your API architecture is incredibly robust. It allows us to perform what we call batch upserts. We can push thousands of price updates in a single API call, rather than pushing them in one by one. So we store the data natively in BigCommerce for a lightning fast experience, and because the API is so efficient, we can still process these massive price up changes from the ERP relatively quickly. So ultimately, it gives the speed of a B2C site with the data integrity of a complex B2B system.
Yeah, being able to handle that level of pricing complexity and make sure that the customer's getting the same experience. At the end of the day, this is all about the customer. And I'm excited to come back to you, John Brown, in a second and see what the results were here, because ultimately that's why we're doing this. But maybe first, just back to you, Ian, on a quick question, which is around, mitigating risk and ensuring that projects run smoothly. Every business out there who is listening to this is thinking, okay, this is great. I love what I'm hearing. There are always risks inherent in a project like this. How do we mitigate them? How do you approach them? How does Agency 51 think about them?
Planning, really. We always go through a discovery phase. And for Videcon, we produced a detailed integration spec. We mapped out every data flow, every field mapping, what triggers when, and all of there's edge cases, and then that becomes your blueprint for the whole team to follow. And that upfront effort it's so important, and something that we do on every project. It's what makes these complex projects deliverable, really. The architecture itself, help manage risk. Each integration that we implemented runs as its own process. As I said before, performance, this was a critical part of it. And again, due to using BigCommerce B2B Edition, we weren't building lots and lots of custom code for sort of basic B2B features. I mentioned before the trade application process and customer account management pricing structures. It's all native to the platform. So, that's a good way of ensuring that you're reducing risk using the right tool for the job.
Of course, we don't go through all of this digital transformation just to build a website that you internally can use and that looks fantastic, and your CEO says, oh yeah, it looks great. Ultimately, this is about business results. So John Brown, what were the business results of this digital transformation? I hope this is driving business success.
Absolutely, and you are absolutely correct. We've seen some huge increases in conversion rates, around 217%, and also up to a 93% reduction in acquisition cost. It's been a really important figure for our business, bringing in new customers. But like we've already covered, the website needs to be accessible. The ease of applying for an account, getting that approved, turning that around into a spending customer can be somewhere between 20 and 40 minutes with us now, which as a trade business is hugely beneficial. We also run a lot of digital marketing campaigns, which is also managed via our partnership with Agency 51. And Videcon, we run our own organic marketing channel. So we're currently trying to drive as much traffic to that website at any given point.
Yeah. When you enter a project like this, there's always a view of how everything's going to go. And you always learn lessons as you go through it. So, John Brown, I'd be really curious from your perspective. Are there things you wish you knew before you started the project? Are there lessons you learned, advice that you would give to, folks out there who are listening, who are thinking, oh, I want to go through a similar journey. We need to improve our e-commerce experience. We need to digitize. What are your lessons learned? What advice would you be giving?
I think there's 3 points here, which we've all covered. Choosing the right platform and support system is absolutely, critical in a project like this. Thankfully, we work with Agency 51 and BigCommerce, which has got us to the place where we are now. Something that Ian also covered is, we planned and we outlined what the long-term business goals were on what we actually wanted to see out of this website. And we made sure that before any work was undertaken, we all knew what we were aiming for. And I think finally, if you do see an issue with your e-commerce or you think it can always be better, just don't wait around. I think after we've seen the success of what we've done over the past 2.5 years since the e-commerce website actually went live, we would have probably done it sooner.
Yeah, I like that. Don't wait, because your competitors aren't waiting, and they you don't want them to be getting a jump start on you. Maybe Ian, sort of to close us out. If I'm a B2B business out there, I'm watching. How do I start? What do I start with here? What do I prioritize first? What should I be doing?
First, keep your customers' experience at the forefront of everything. That sounds simple, but when you're deep in a large project, it's easy to get bogged down in technical discussion. Lose that sight of what are you doing, what you're doing. So every decision should focus on whether it reduces friction for the customer. And with this in mind, you'll reduce risk because you're building something that your customers will want. And I think, as John said, that that's what Videcon's approach was throughout, to be fair. And it's what guided every technical decision that was made. I think second, choose a platform that is genuinely built for B2B. That sounds pretty obvious, but so many businesses end up trying to force a B2C platform to do B2B operations, and it creates complexity, cost that just isn't necessary. BigCommerce B2B edition, it gives us a lot of the B2B functionality out of the box, like I've already said. So you're going to hit the ground running. Another key point to mention, particularly for BigCommerce, is it's SaaS. So security, updates, the infrastructure, that's all taken care of. That's going to reduce cost of ownership. There's nothing worse than having to apply security patches every other month out of the blue. And then third, I'd say choose an implementation partner who does fully understand B2B, and will invest that time in properly planning and architecting the solution. Understand your data, what systems own what, and make sure your integration strategy is properly thought through. That upfront work, the discovery, the specification, understanding the business and the business processes, that's what de-risks the whole project. And it's certainly been our experience across all the B2B projects that we've delivered at Agency 51. And I think Videcon is a fantastic example of that approach paying off.
Yeah, I really like that. And what you said it right at the start there, I think is so important. Keep the customer front and center. And also, John Brown, you mentioned it. What are your business objectives? What are you driving towards, right? Is it new customer acquisition? Is it share of wallet? Is it just operational efficiencies? And I think if you use that as the guiding principles, customers and your business objectives, then you're on the right track. We're kind of coming up to the end here, and I want to throw a question out to you, John Brown, to kind of wrap us up. I'm curious from your perspective, what's exciting you about the future? What's next for Videcon?
I think growth. We have all the correct tools in place now. We've talked through how we designed it, why we designed it, implementing it, we've had just over 2.5 years now of continually growing the efficiencies throughout the business. We're ramping up the marketing from a paid side, from an organic side as well. So huge amounts of revenue, hopefully.
I love that, because what you actually mentioned there, right, is this is an unlock. This is an unlock for that growth. It's an unlock for that paid marketing that you can then start to utilize to go after new customers. Ian, John, thank you so much for this discussion today. I think this was absolutely fantastic. Hopefully everyone listening took something away from this. Maybe just quickly, if anyone who's listening wants to reach out, how can they get hold of you? Hopefully you wouldn't mind if they do that. Maybe start with you, Ian.
Yeah, agency51.com. You can go to the website and sort of go to the contact us page and reach out that way.
Perfect. And for you, John Brown, what about if someone says, "Oh, I'd love to get some advice here"? Do you mind if they reach out, and how can they do it?
Absolutely, same principle. We discussed the Videcon website for the past half an hour. Go take a look at it. It's videcon.co.uk. I'm happy to take personal questions at jbrown@videcon.co.uk as well.
Guys, thank you so much for joining me today. This was absolutely fantastic. Thank you.